It is about 2 p.m. on a lovely afternoon, probably about, I don't know, 75 degrees out here. It is July 25th, 2026. If you've been following along at all, you know that I am on my little sub vacation, catching up on my chore and weekend. And so we are now, let's see, Thursday, Friday, Saturday is the third day into a 5-day marathon. Just trying to get little things caught up and get to some of those tasks that normally aren't the highest burning priority. When you do something like this, oftentimes you just jump from high priority to high priority to high priority. And if you can't ever find time to get out of that, then you start entering into a death spiral. That some things, like say weeding a garden bed, it doesn't need to happen immediately, but the longer you put it off, the more difficult of a task it is. I'm just hanging up some wind chimes here that I had taken down for reasons a few weeks ago. And then we're going to head back and we're going to turn the compost. So today might be a good day to talk about compost. All right, first we need to get a pitchfork. So interestingly enough, when I started, before we moved out here, started doing more kind of urban homesteady type stuff. And all that means to me, it's the same general stuff that you do. It just means that you don't have a lot of property maintained. Now, I think it's absolutely underrated. A lot of people associate doing this kind of stuff with owning land, but in fact, you can do a lot of the quote-unquote homestead or permaculture activities. Hell, in an apartment, you could do a lot of them. You don't necessarily need to grow the stuff yourself. As a matter of fact, it's cheaper to buy it almost universally. Around here, there is a co-op, a seed store called Wilco. It's the one I use primarily because it's a co-op, so it's not owned by a corporation. And around about, I don't know, in a couple weeks, they'll have case lot sales where you can buy like tomatoes and peppers and fruit and stuff by the case. And I guarantee you, unless you're running a commercial operation, that fruit is going to be cheaper than the fruit that you see. Sorry if you hear that tractor in the background. That's my partner Kimmy. She's moving some stuff. So anyway, we're talking about compost because everybody produces organic waste, and I'm not talking about the kind you drop in the toilet. I'm talking about the leftovers from food. Sorry, I was just hiking it up and getting the pitchfork. And as Kimmy has said, it's a shame it oftentimes goes into a plastic bag where it'll sit in a landfill for maybe thousands of years until it breaks down and the nutrients can return to the soil. Unfortunately, we've learned that plastic breaks down into microcomponents a lot faster than that. But nevertheless, it's a shame to take that precious material that is used to fertilize and create new food and throw it into a landfill with all the toxic elements and industrial cleaners and everything else that we put in there. So one of the first things that an individual can do is to start composting. Now, composting, one of the reasons I think it's a great place to start is everybody produces the waste, and you can't really do it wrong. By that I mean everything's going to break down over time. So the only thing you're doing is maybe speeding up the clock a little bit. Now, I should put a big caveat here because most people who might be listening to this are not going to try these things. But if you're trying to compost things that need greater effort and complexity, for example, if you're trying to compost your own manure, that is a whole different ballgame because humans eat, first of all, really the scat, the manure from carnivores is a different ball game. So that's why dog and cat feces does not make for good gardens. In fact, it'll poison your garden. While, from ruminants, sheep, cows, even chickens and that sort of stuff will give you a good return. So we're not going to address something like dealing with your own waste. That's outside the scope of this. So when I first got here, one of the first things I built was a two-prong composting bin. I'm looking at it right now, and we've since sort of abandoned it, and I'll explain why here in a second. And we've moved on to a different sort of system. Now, when I was in the suburbs, what I did is I had one of those black. It wasn't one that you turn. It was one that that you stack up. So it had a door in the bottom. It's about 3.5 feet tall. Ooh, look at those. I'm just seeing a bunch of red wigglers in here. And then you just put compost in the top. And that looks gorgeous. The heat from the black plastic, and if you watered it regularly, and then just the pressure from that going down, it would do a pretty good job of composting. Now, I would use an auger, which is about a corkscrew, a wine opener, except instead of it being like 3 inches, these are 2.5 feet long, and the circumference of the corkscrew is about 3 inches. So you can get one of those, and they're used to like stir and aerate the compost, which, if you're at all serious about it, is an excellent thing to do. So why did I abandon my first compost setup once I was here? Again, because it was such an instrumental identity part of doing this. Look, there's some kind of beetles in there. Well, there's an animal that loves compost more than anything, and that's rats. So the further you go out into the country, and in fact, a lot of towns have this problem. This is a particular issue in the Pacific Northwest, is we have a problem with rats. So some of the measures that you'd use to keep most animals out of the compost don't work with rats. Rats are really smart, for one thing, and they are tenacious. They are problem solvers. They can outwit you sometimes. They can outmaneuver you, and and by the time you figure out you got a rat problem, it's oftentimes too late. So they burrowed up through the wood, through the wire. They find a little bit of an opening on wire. They can exploit that and just bend the wire to get what they want. So by having our open compost bin, we were inadvertently creating a rat problem. So right now I've got a two-pronged solution. What I'm looking at right here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 10, and I'll put the photo for the recording up so you can see what I'm talking about. I've got 10 of those big plastic bins, the kind you can get at the Home Depot or whatever. They're like $7 a piece. They're the 20-gallon totes. The bottoms are great. They're made out of a thick black plastic that doesn't seem to be affected by UV. The tops, which right now, if you go to the Home Depot, you can get them either in yellow or red, do get affected by the UV, and I give them a lifespan of about 5 years out in the wild. I just pulled one off that is cracked up and deteriorating. But for a $7 solution, this works pretty well. So I have 10 of them, and I instituted this in the spring. Now, I should be doing this chore that I'm doing right here about every 2 weeks. You could do it more often if you want, but it's starting to get overkill. And what I'm doing is I have a pitchfork, and the bins go in order: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so the first thing we do is we dump compost into the number 1 barrel, or the number 1 bin. And then when you turn, you just move the stuff from 9 into 10. And right now I just was filling up 9, and 10 is empty. So I haven't gotten that far. And then 8 into 9, and you can consolidate based on how good the compost looks. Oh, look at that. It's some nice mold. All right, and this one is full of some kind of leafy green material that was growing in the dark in the compost. These bins are full of red wigglers. Now, when I first set up my compost bin, I also set up a worm farm right next to it. I'm looking at it, it's kind of buried underneath some blackberries right there. It worked really well, but the worms can get out, and they did. So they escaped into my garden, no complaints there. But what's great about these bins is to make them work. Let me look and see. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. About, I would say 3/8 inch holes drilled in the bottom. And I've learned to drill holes in the side too. And I drill a couple holes in the top. So that will allow, I don't have as many holes in the top of the lid because I want to trickle the water in, because compost doesn't work if it's too dry or if it's too wet. So you want to keep it moist like a chocolate cake. It's kind of it's the same thing with gardening. And then you want to aerate it, and that will speed up the process, where you can go from 6 months to a year to break stuff down to doing it in weeks or months. So the point is that the worms will actually crawl into the bins through those tiny little holes. They will, however worm senses work, and I have no idea how that goes. They can sense it and then get into those tiny little cracks. So the benefit of this compost system that I'm doing with these bins is I'm also have a worm farm. Now, if I wanted to, there's a woman down at the farmer's market who sells red wigglers, and I could go get another pound of them or something, and then redistribute them through the compost, which I probably will from time to time. But especially the end bin was great. It was full of worms. That's what we want to see. Worms are good. And in fact, if you're looking at compost, a lot of the things that you might be alarmed at, like maggots, they're not a bad thing. They're all that stuff is just aiding in the decomposition and getting it to where you eventually want it, which is organic supplement for your soil. Okay, so I said that we have a two-pronged system. So you've got my, ooh, look at that mother. It's like a 4-inch worm. Remember, oh, look at all those red wigglers. Oh, you guys are gorgeous. Gorgeous. This is a really satisfying job. Oh my God, look at you guys. So the worms are good. We want the worms. So this is basically food waste, and we put some organic material in here from the gardens too. I will also throw in root balls from plants that have been planted in pots. So sometimes you'll pull a plant and it is root bound, and I just toss that thing wholesale into the composter, because all that soil is just going back to the source. What we're trying to do as much as we can is create a closed system, so we're not wasting anything that we are producing. Right? We don't want nutrients to go to the dump. We want them to stay here, because the more we can capture here, the less inputs we need. So that's one of the fundamental permaculture designs that we're trying to get to, is don't let anything that has organic value get off of the property. Oh my God, look at that mass of worms. Oh, you guys are pretty. This one's going to be ready right here soon. So this is my worm bin slash I don't know what you want to say, slash organic composter. Ooh, you're a big boy too. Sometimes what I do is I just leave the bottom in. What I am noticing is we need to do a better job of breaking up our eggs. The eggshells are important. In fact, in this environment, with the silty soil I have, it leaches calcium faster than other soils. So having calcium enriched back into the soil is an important measure beyond just your standard nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So calcium is probably the next thing on the list. and calcium deficiency you see a lot. So that's why it's good to recycle the eggs. But what you really want, the eggshells, what you really want to do is pulverize them as much as you're willing to do, and that will speed up the process. I mean, they will break down in time, but I've dug to the bottom of these piles and found eggshells. They're not going to hurt anything. If you put them straight in the garden, you had some eggshells in there, they're just not going to be as effective as if you break them down. So the thing that we do not put in here is animal manure. The exception would be the rabbits. We could put the rabbit manure in here, and I need to take a whole session to devote to rabbit manure. One thing that I don't like in here I'm seeing is all these sticks. Get you guys out of there. Don't need sticks. So we have what we call the heap, which I'm looking at. It's about, I don't know, 30 yards from here, closer to the barn. So when we muck the animal stalls, the chickens or the sheep primarily, then that goes, and the weeds, especially the noxious weeds, they all go into the heap. Now, the benefit of the heap is we can play some temperature games. So ideally, you want to get your compost up to about 140 degrees or more. And it will happen on its own with a big asterisk. Everything I've ever read suggests that to get your compost pile generating enough heat, and what that heat does when you get it up above 140 degrees, that will kill all the seeds in it. So if you have any weed seeds or anything else, any other nasties in there, it will kill them. Now with human manure, I think you need to get it up to 180 degrees. I'm not certain. And that's one of the reasons that you don't want to fuck with that, because it can be, if you get that one wrong, you can get into a lot of trouble. But plus it's illegal. So, and whenever I think about the stuff that's illegal, there's the people who are like, hey, well, why does the government keep me from doing things? I always use the neighbor standard. Do I want my next door neighbor processing human manure? And the answer is no, I don't. I'd prefer they didn't do that. So I'm down with the law on that one. Okay, so the heap over there is the next thing I need to do is rotate that, but it's big enough. We produce enough from the weeds and from the sheep and from the chickens that it needs to be turned with the tractor. I'm looking at it and it's big enough to generate heat. But I set that thing up in the spring and it's kind of been sitting there collecting stuff, and I haven't either sprayed it with water in a while nor stirred it. So after I get this part done here, that's my next thing. Now this is looking good. You actually don't use compost year round. The best time is to put it on the ground in the fall if your garden's going to bed, or you put it on in the spring right before you plant. You get it all mixed in there. And if you do it correctly, you can do it without chemical fertilizers. Again, chemical fertilizers are a problem because they're mined. So, and we are looking at a shortage. It depends on how much time. We were getting very short on not potassium, phosphorus. This has come up multiple times in the history of humankind. But we keep discovering sources, but they're still non-renewable. Like we can't create the nitrogen or anything else that we mine out of the ground. We have to rely on natural processes. It's like I've joked before. We know exactly how to create petroleum. You put this organic material in the earth, and then you get it under a big pressure, and you get it under heat, and then you let it cook for 2 million years. Well, so it's not a complicated recipe, but we just don't have the time to pull it off. So even though you could say, oh yeah, on the long scale, we could create petroleum if we wanted to, but it's not a feasible, practical thing. So we're going to run out at some point. There's no way around it. Now, what the industrialists are betting on is that necessity being the mother of invention, will create another source of energy to replace it, but that's a pretty big bet because in agriculture, all of our modern methods of agriculture, including what I do here to a degree, is based on petroleum. That's what we run our tractors on. That's what we run our mowers on. That's what we run our seeders on. That's what we ultimately, the electricity that I'm using is coming from coal-fired plants. Um, so, so even though we might work really hard to try to eliminate that stuff as much as we can, it's still there. So that's our composting. We use the bins to move stuff out. And again, I'm looking at some really great compost to be ready to go this fall. And we try to recycle as much as we can. Now, there's 2 levels on top of that. We do one, and there's another layer on top that is historic, but we haven't gotten there yet. So you've got this stuff. So you take all the organics you create out of the house, and so they're sorted. Most of that will go into these compost bins, except if there's stuff that the chickens will eat, then we want that to go to chickens, because in an efficiency perspective, they're turning that directly into a source of protein. They're turning that into eggs, or as we are not at this point slaughtering birds for meat, but then it would be turning into meat. So that is a much more efficient use of the calories and stuff that are coming out of that compost. Now, our ancestors not that long ago did not have access to refrigeration. Look at that. Plastic in everything. Always plastic. So if you were a farmer, what you did is your first line of defense was the pigs. So rather than put, what we do now is we put all of our leftovers in the fridge and we leave them there for a week or two and then throw them out. You do it like I do it. But they didn't have refrigeration, and when they did at first, they wouldn't waste it that way like we do. So what they would do is they would feed their leftovers, their first run leftovers, to pigs. So you, rather than raise pigs, what you would do is in the spring, you'd get a piglet, and then you'd have a pigsty, and then you would feed that off of the waste that you produce, stuff that you wouldn't be using anyway. So you'd send all your leftovers and, things like corn husks and stuff that we don't eat, but are the byproduct of food. Pigs will eat just about anything. You send that to the pigs, and then you're turning that into pork. You're turning the next level of compost into chicken and into eggs. Then the third level, you're turning into the stuff that makes your vegetables and your gardens grow. So it is, from a permaculture perspective, one of the most important cycles and one of the easiest to achieve, because you can compost. There's all kinds of expensive widgets and gadgets where you can compost on your kitchen table, but all you need here's if you want to start composting, here's John's quick and easy method. Go get yourself one of those, like, I don't know if they're how many gallons of ice cream, like one of those 2-gallon containers, the big plastic ones with a plastic lid. Get yourself one of those. Oh, there's a hawk. And then you want to get yourself like a 5-gallon bucket from Home Depot. And you're going to want to drill some holes in the bucket so it can breathe. And then you take that ice cream bucket and you put it underneath your kitchen table or your kitchen sink. And then you put all your food scraps in there. And then once a week or every couple days, you take it out and put it in the bucket that's outside. And if you stir the bucket, the compost will break down at an amazing level. You'd be surprised at how small it gets very quickly when the water goes out. And you can have a composting system. Let's see, what do I do with it when I'm done? I don't know. I think you can find somebody around you that gardens or has flower beds or does something to it. I feel like that's not a real problem, that you can find somebody to take it. All right, so that's composting here. Composting 101. I will take a picture of this so you can see what I was working on. You can see I'm not breathing too hard, so this isn't too bad of a job. Kind of fun, actually. All right. So until next time, if you want to contact me, you can email me at john@johnlarson.org. I think you can also email me at john@dabblerfarm.org. I should probably look that up before I don't remember. Um, and yeah, we're just getting this started. Not very many people listening so far. So if this is interesting to you, spread the word. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks and have a great day.